Senate will be in order. All members, guests, and staff will please rise to recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Senate will be in recess, subject to the call of the chair.
Senate will come to order. The senator from Suffolk and Middlesex, Mr. Brownsberger, has presented an order which the clerk will read.
Order relative to the calling for a convention of the two branches for the purposes of receiving such communication as the Governor Maurice Healey may be pleased to make relating to the concerns of the Commonwealth.
The senator from 1st Essex and Middlesex, Mr. Tarr, moves that the rules be suspended to consider the matter forthwith. Is there an objection? The chair hears none. The question now comes on adoption of the order. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the order is adopted. The Senate will be in recess, subject to the call of the chair.
The Senate will come to order. Several members come before the Senate for their final passage. An act establishing a senior property tax deferral program in the city of Taunton. An act authorizing Matthew E. Sonnabend to purchase credible service from the Barnstable County Retirement Board, House 3643 amended. Question comes on passing these bills to be enacted. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bills are passed to be enacted, and the bills will be signed by the President and laid before the Governor for her approbation. Senate will be in a brief recess.
Senate will be in order. Papers from the House.
Several petitions come from the House under the suspension of Joint Rule 12 referred to their respective committees.
Question comes on suspension of Joint Rule 12. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The matters will be referred to the several committees. Senate will be in a brief recess. From the House.
The House bill creating a sick leave bank for Kelly Wheeler, an employee of the Department of Developmental Services, House number 4213, comes from the House, passed to be engrossed.
The senator from Spencer, Senator Durant, asks unanimous consent that the rules be suspended, allowed the matter to be considered forthwith. Is there an objection? Chair is none. Rules are suspended. Question comes on ordering the bill to a third reading. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is ordered to a third reading. Brief recess. If there is no objection, on page 3, item number 110 in the notice section of the bill, of the calendar rather, that will be considered forthwith. Without objection, hearing none, all those, question comes on order the bill to a third reading. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Bill is ordered to a third reading. Third reading of the bill.
An act establishing a special purpose revolving fund in the town of North Andover, Senate number 2454.
Bill's been read a third time. Question comes on passing the bill being engrossed. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is passed. Be engrossed. Brief recess. Reports of a committee.
The Committee on Rules of the two branches acting concurrently has referred several Senate petitions. Reports recommending that Joint Rule 12 be suspended with reference thereto. Joan B. Lovely for the committee.
Senator Lovely moves that the rules be suspended to allow the matter to be considered forthwith. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The rules are suspended. Question comes on ordering the bills to, question comes on a suspension of Joint Rule 12. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. And Joint Rule 12 is suspended. Matters will be referred to their several committees. Senate will be in brief recess. Senate will be in order. The petition's been filed, which the clerk will read.
Petition of Sal Indy Domenico for legislation relative to the development of a professional soccer stadium and waterfront park on the part of the Mystic River designated port area. Senate docket number 2908 comes from the Secretary of State, have been in compliance with Joint Rule 9.
Senator DiDomenico moves that Joint Rules 20 and 12 be suspended. Question comes on that suspension. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Those rules are suspended. The matter will be referred to the Committee on Economic Development. Senate will be in a brief recess. Senate will be in order. If there is no objection, we're going to proceed with the orders of the day. Anybody have anything they want to bring up before we do that? Hearing none, proceed with the orders of the day. On page 1 of the calendar, item number 93, Senate number 2415. Question comes on order the bill to third reading. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is ordered to a third reading. Same page, item number 94. Question comes on ordering the bill to a third reading. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is ordered to a third reading. On item number 95, question comes on ordering the bill to a third reading. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is ordered to a third reading. 98, same question. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is ordered to a third reading. On page 2, item number 99, same question. Question comes. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is ordered to a third reading. On same page, item number 100, House number 3970. Question comes on order the bill to third reading. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is ordered to a third reading. Item number 105, chair hears pass. Moving on to item number 92, under third reading matters on the second page. Chair hears pass. Item number 106, question comes on, the bill's been, third reading of a bill.
An act establishing a sick leave bank for Sheila Chav, an employee of the trial court, Senate number 2525.
Bill's been read a third time. Question comes on pass. The bill to be engrossed. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is passed to be engrossed. If there is no objection, now returning to matters previously passed over. Out of order, we'll take item number 92 under third reading. Third reading of a bill.
A bill to amend the provisions of Chapter 381 of the Acts of 2020 to continue the town of Hingham senior means tested property tax exemption, Senate number 2407.
Senator Connor offers an amendment which the clerk will read.
Mr. O'Connor moves to amend the bill by substituting a new draft entitled an act to provide for the continuance of the town of Hingham senior means tested property tax exemption, Senate number 2553.
Question comes on adoption of the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Senate ought to be in a brief recess. No. Senate will be in order. Question comes on passing the bill to be engrossed. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is passed to be engrossed. Senate will be in a brief recess. One matter comes before the Senate for its final passage, an act authorizing the town of North Reading to use a portion of conservation land for public way purposes. This is a land taking. That's House number 4169 amended. This is a land taking, requires a roll call. Before the roll call, does anybody wish to be heard? The clerk will call the roll.
Michael J. Barrett. Michael D. Brady. Yes. William N. Brownsberger. Yes. Yes. Nick Collins. Yes. Joanne M. Comerford. Yes. Cynthia Stone Cream. Brendan P. Crichton. John J. Cronin. Julian Sear. Sal N. DiDomenico. Peter J. Durant. Yes. Lydia Edwards. Yes. James B. Eldridge. Yes. Ryan C. Fatman. Yes. Paul R. Feeney. Yes. Barry R. Feingold. Cindy F. Friedman. Yes. Adam Gomez. Patricia D. Jalen. Yes. John F. Keenan. Yes. Edward J. Kennedy. Robin K. Kennedy. Yes. Jason M. Lewis. Yes. Joan B. Lovely. Yes. Paul W. Mark. Liz Miranda. Yes. Mark C. Montigny. Michael O. Moore. Susan L. Moran. Patrick M. O'Connor. Jacob R. Oliveira. Mark R. Pacheco. Yes. Pavel Payano. Yes. Rebecca L. Roush. Yes. Michael J. Rodericks. Yes. Michael F. Rush. Yes. Bruce E. Tarr. Yes. Walter F. Timmelty. Yes. John C. Velas.
Pursuant to the Senate rules, the chair will announce the votes of several members.
Michael J. Barrett.
Yes.
Yes. Julian Sear.
Yes.
Yes. Sal N. D. Domenico. Yes. Barry R. Feingold.
Yes.
Yes. Adam Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Edward J. Kennedy.
Yes.
Yes. Mark C. Montigny.
Yes.
Yes. Michael O. Moore.
Yes.
Yes. Patrick M. O'Connor.
Yes.
Yes. Jacob R. Oliveira.
Yes.
Yes. John C. Velas.
Yes.
Yes. She has not. Cynthia Stone Cream votes yes.
Mr. President, I'd like to be recorded in the affirmative.
John J. Cronin votes yes. Brendan P. Crichton votes yes.
Senator Paul Mark, Susan L. Moran.
Correct.
Is that all you got left?
Yep. Paul W. Mark.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm going to announce that the roll is going to remain open.
Susan L. Moran.
Yes.
Yes.
All members?
Have all members been recorded?
Yes.
39 members having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. The matter is passed to be enacted and will be signed by the President, laid before the Governor for her approbation. Senate will be in a brief recess. The chair would like to recognize Senator Collins for the purpose of introducing a very distinguished servant to the public. Honored to have him with us today.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through the members, it's my honor, though bittersweet, to recognize a friend and someone who's dedicated 41 years of service to our city and our Commonwealth, and that's Detective Larry Ellison, who has accomplished many things. Probably one of my favorite is to become the class president of South Boston High School in 1982. He's here joined by some friends, but also his brother Derek, supervisor of the Boston Public Schools Safety Department, Detective Jeffrey Lopes, current president of the Mass Association of Minority Law Enforcement Officers, detective, also the PhD in law and policy. Also with Larry today to celebrate is Juan Sion, detective in the Boston Police, along with Vice President of the Mass Association of Minority Law Enforcement Officers. Through the work of Larry and his colleagues, they have achieved some transformative and historic milestones in the path of progress. Possibly none more powerful than the creation of the Post Commission, working with the members of this chamber, and to establish a permanent seat on the commission for the Mass Association of Minority Law Enforcement Officers, a seat, the inaugural seat that he holds today. So on behalf of the Senate and my colleagues, to submit this citation from the Senate, that it known that the Massachusetts Senate extends its congratulations to Larry Ellison in recognition of your 41-year career at the Boston Police Department, including the longest-serving detective in over a decade as Mail President, and that it be further known that the Massachusetts Senate extends its best wishes for continued success. The citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to, and a copy thereof transmitted by the Clerk of the Senate, signed by President Karen Spilka, Clerk Michael Hurley, myself, Senator Nick Collins, and colleagues. I'd like to welcome Larry to the Senate, thank him for his service. He's mentioned that along the way with these debates, he's really enjoyed working with the Senate President, Senator Brownsberger, and Minority Leader Tarr on those issues around post-commission. And we'd like him to sign the Book of Distinguished Guests on his way up. So, welcome, Larry.
Senator Collins for this distinguished honor. Also want to recognize Senate President Spitka, Senate President Brownsberger, Minority Leader Tarr, along with some of my other senators, Senator Miranda, who is here, thank you, colleague and a friend. Senator Edwards, thank you for your time here, as well as the work with you as just a former city councilor in the city of Boston. Thank you for all the work you've done helping our organization. As well as my hometown Senator Feeney, I believe I saw him here. Yeah, I see him every morning passing pretty much on his way here. So thank you, sir, for representing the town that I live in. I also want to recognize, as I said earlier, the members from Mamleo here who came out to support me. My colleague up there, Leilana, thank you for coming down. As well as my brother who has been here with me. Just a quick story, we didn't know each other growing up. We found each other, and it's been one of the best days of my life, reconnecting with him in such a meaningful way. I don't get emotional here, but he means a lot to me. So I just wanted to recognize him as well. Thank you all for this day. It has been a long journey, but one that's not over. I will continue to do the work even as I retire from the Boston Police Department, because it is that much important. And as you all know, what we're facing these days, it's going to take all of us, I mean all of us, to fight some of the problems that we're seeing, and not just here in the state, but around the country. So with that, I won't take up much more of your time. It's quite an honor to be standing here. I never thought as a young kid from Roxbury going through South Boston, having rocks thrown at me, that I would be greeted with such respect and honor. So I appreciate that very much. And again, thank you all.
Senator Comerford, the Senate will be in order. Senator Comerford offers a motion that we adjourn, moves that we adjourn today in the memory of Joe Tringali. Chair will recognize Senator Comerford to make some remarks.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I start, I'd like to recognize that in the chamber with us today, we have members of Joe's family, Kathy Edgell, his life partner, also Tony Tringali, Lisa Peters, and Nancy Tringali. And we also have leadership from Stavros, Angelina Ramirez, CEO of Stavros, and Julia Myers, Chief Operating Officer of Stavros. You are most welcome here. Joe Tringali, a 45-year member of the Stavros Center for Independent Living, a passionate, beloved, and fierce leader in the disability justice movement, passed away on December 27. Joe's staunch, strategic, and unwavering advocacy was dedicated to healthcare and personal care advances, housing accessibility, an end to the state's draconian mass health estate recovery law, and many, many others, and many, many other issues furthering the rights of people living with disabilities. Joe's leadership manifested statewide as he propelled our Senate's team's work on both legislation to allow spouses to be compensated as caregivers and efforts to reform estate recovery. He was also passionate about improving access to and appropriate compensation for personal care attendants, and worked collaboratively with CHAPA and other groups to promote the development of accessible housing across the state. Joe also worked tirelessly at home in Western Massachusetts. He was instrumental locally in developing the accessible curb cuts and traffic signals in Amherst, the first of their kind in Western Massachusetts. He was equally key to the development of fully accessible apartments at Chestnut Court in Amherst in the 1970s, another first in the region, but not the last. The collaborative Home Sweet Home program, which was Joe's brainchild, currently helps neighbors in Hampden and Hampshire and Franklin counties acquire safe, affordable wheelchair access ramps for their homes, and has to date built over 1,000 ramps to help people remain in their homes after becoming disabled. These are just a few of Joe's many accomplishments. He was a formidable advocate with a giant heart, a will of iron, and a wonderful sense of humor. Joe was a champion for the right of people to have self-directed care and to live independently with appropriate support. Angelina Ramirez, CEO of Stavros, wrote, quote, that his legacy will endure as a testament to the unwavering fight for the rights and inclusion of people with disabilities who are as determined as he was to live independently, end quote. Joe is survived by his partner, Kathy Edgell, his brother and sister-in-law, Tony and Nancy Tringali, his daughter, Hannah Gipperich, nieces and nephews, families and friends, colleagues near and far, who mourn his loss and celebrate his exquisitely lived life. Thank you.
So the question comes on adoption of the motion, which is that when we adjourn today, we do so in the memory of Joe Tringali. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. The Senate will stand in a moment of silence in the memory of Joseph Tringali. Thank you. Senate will be in a brief recess. Recognize Senator Rush for the purpose of recognizing some distinguished guests.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the members, I would very honored to be here this afternoon. And on behalf of Senator Collins and myself, we are honored to introduce to you a very special guest, United States Navy Captain Dennis Pimentel, who is with us here in the back of the chamber. And yeah, give him a big round of applause, right? I was in uniform, I'd be saluting him, so luckily I have a suit on right now. But he currently serves as the chair of the USS Massachusetts Commissioning Committee. So a little bit about Dennis. He's a captain in the United States Navy, native of Hudson, Massachusetts. His personal awards in the United States Navy include the Legion of Merit, the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, the Meritorious Service Medal, the Joint Service Commendation Medal, the Navy Commendation Medal, the Joint Service Achievement Medal, the Navy Achievement Medal, and various unit and campaign awards. For those of you who don't know, the United States Navy is currently building a brand new Virginia-class nuclear-powered attack submarine. It is currently under construction. And after much lobbying, largely by the captain and his organization, the Department of the Navy and the Department of Defense have agreed that that ship, which bears the name, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the 7th such ship in the history of the United States Navy, will be commissioned here in Boston Harbor in 2025. So in no short order, this was done through the wonderful and intense lobbying of the captain, his crew, and as chair of the USS Massachusetts Commissioning Committee. He has worked to make sure that this will happen. It has been signed. It will be christened here in Boston Harbor at the Flynn Cruise Port on the South Boston waterfront, and quite a celebration will be had. So again, please welcome me in thanking Captain Pimentel and his commissioning crew to ensure that this is happening in 2025. Thank you, Captain.
Attorneys' matters be- Senate will be in a brief recess. Senate will be in order. We're returning to items previously passed over, and this is the last item of the day, but of course the main item of the day. Item number 105 on page 2, a bill to provide for competitiveness and infrastructure investment in Massachusetts. Question comes in order to bill to a third reading, pending which several amendments have been offered. Chair will Senate will be in a brief recess. Senate will be in order. Senator Tar.
Thank you, Mr. President, and through you to the members. And Mr. President, I appreciate the members' patience as we've tried to work through some of the details of the legislation that now pens before the Senate. And I want to thank my good friend, the distinguished chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, for the work that he's done on this particular bill, the purpose of which is to make the Commonwealth of Massachusetts competitive in the competition nationally for federal funds, of which there are a lot to be competed for, and we continuously hear about that in the media and from other sources. And what we know, Mr. President, is that in order to be successful, not only as the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, but through our cities and towns, our school districts, others who might be eligible for federal funds, there needs to be matching amounts of money that are available to be able to enter that competition and to be successful. And so the governor has presented us with this bill, which I think is important for us to consider. However, Mr. President, there are also aspects that have been added to the legislation for which I have some concern. But I'm hoping that as a threshold matter, that my good friend from Westport will give us an explanation of all of the provisions of the bill in an overview fashion. And then, Mr. President, I'm hoping that we can have further debate following that explanation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. President, and through you to the members, and I thank the gentleman, the minority leader, for his question and asking that I provide an overview explanation. I do have some prepared remarks, and then I look forward to he and I, as we often do, engage in some conversation and some debate about particular issues. But the legislation before us today was filed by the governor and aims to take advantage of interest accrued from the stabilization fund. The stabilization fund has hit historic high levels and is currently sitting north of $8 billion. At this level, the stabilization fund is anticipated to accumulate approximately $250 million annually in interest. Currently, by statute, that interest is deposited directly back into the stabilization fund. This bill proposes redirecting future stabilization fund interest when the fund is at healthy levels, which we define as 1, when the amounts in the fund exceed 10% of budgeted revenues of previous fiscal year, and 2, that the balance of the fund has not decreased in the previous year. Unless these two conditions are met, then no diversions will occur. However, when a diversion does occur, the interest will be used for two important key purposes. 1, the diversion will be used for matching funds for federal grants, leveraging these federal dollars, and 2, to meet our other long-term debt obligations, namely OPEB and unfunded pension liabilities. By creating a dedicated pool of funds, the Commonwealth can leverage this money to help unlock some of the $17 billion available in once-in-a-generation federal funding for investments in transportation, housing, climate, economic development, and technology. Maintaining a primary pool of funds will signal to the federal government that the Commonwealth is willing and desires to partner on these projects. Additionally, the bill proposes using up to $50 million for the match on local and regional projects and $12 million in technology assistance for our municipalities to help them to apply for these matching funds. In anticipation of the federal funds winding down by 2026, the bill would also allow the Secretary of A&F to use the stabilization fund interest to support debt management strategies and fund long-term liabilities, like I mentioned, namely unfunded pension liabilities that stands north of $40 billion, and OPEB, other post-employment benefits, namely retiree health care in the long term. In keeping with this theme, the bill also expands upon a Senate initiative from the FY24 budget that changes the distribution of the threshold of above-threshold capital gains revenue put towards the state fund, OPEB, and pension. This proposal allows us to pay down these long-term liabilities at a faster pace when the stabilization fund is at a healthier level. This fund strikes the right balance between protecting the stabilization fund for rainy days while maximizing our competitiveness and responsibility, tackling our known long-term liabilities. I have been very public lately, and I will continue to be public, that I am going to be very, very protective of our reserve funds that we have responsibly built up over these last few years. Whether that reserve fund is the stabilization fund, whether that reserve fund is the transitional escrow fund, whether it's any of our other reserve funds that we have responsibly built over the last few years. However, this fund is at such a balance now that it makes sense to utilize the interest from this fund to leverage the $17 billion of federal capital that's going to be available to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and pay down our other long-term liabilities. Mr. President, I hope that members will vote yes on this bill, and when the vote is taken, I ask for the call of
Yes, The gentleman has asked for a call of the yeas and nays. Those stand in agreement, please stand. A sufficient number have arisen. The bill will be called by a call of the yeas and nays. Yes, the senator from Essex, Senator Todd.
Thank you, Madam President, and how delightful it is to see you upon the rostrum. And I note that you have a pen ready to be able to take notes, and I know that you will because you're a very, very conscientious student of government and the fiscal matters affecting the Commonwealth. And so I'm pleased that you're on the rostrum to be able to witness the discussion that we're about to have. So, Madam President, I do want to thank my good friend for his explanation. I also want to thank him for a couple of things. Number one is his continuing to look forward to anticipate what the Commonwealth might be facing and how we might be best prepared for it. And I think that's important, Madam President, because we know that the situation has changed dramatically over the last few weeks in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as we begin to realize that revenues are softening and official notice is taken of that fact as we see the governor adjusting the revenue estimate by about $1 billion, and we see 9C cuts to the tune in excess of $300 million, closer to $400 million. And we understand, Madam President, that we have now entered a period of time in which we need to be extremely cautious and navigate carefully to maintain the fiscal stability of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And it's in that context that we must consider all of the provisions of this bill. Now, there is no doubt that it would behoove us and it would be a mistake not to try to make some funds available to leverage federal funding in the amounts that my good friend referenced. And this is a situation of risk and return. And we do need to risk some of the amounts of money that were referenced relative to the interest on the stabilization fund for the possibility of the return of federal dollars into the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that could be extremely, extremely significant. But at the same time, Madam President, we know that, and this is the second thing that I want to thank my good friend for, is our collaboration around the stabilization fund. We know that one of the reasons that we have confidence entering the situation that we are entering with regard to a downturn in revenues is that the Commonwealth has an historic amount in its stabilization fund. And that is not an accident. That is the result of the prudence and the commitment and the fortitude of the gentleman from Westport, and I've been pleased to work with him on this priority. The fortitude to say we are going to protect and grow the stabilization fund. And we are not going to concede or be seduced by the temptation to be able to use the stabilization fund as an account of convenience that we use when things perhaps get a little bit difficult, when it would be easy to withdraw those funds and smooth things over. Neither the gentleman from Westport nor I have ever agreed to that. And I suspect that that partnership will continue, and I look forward to it continuing. But now, Madam President, we're in a situation that we have not been in for several years, where we have a healthy balance in the stabilization fund, but we also have a downturn in revenue that's just been estimated by administration and finance of about $1 billion. So we need to think very carefully not only about the balance that's in the stabilization fund right now, which is at an historic amount as a result of the fiscal discipline that we have had in this chamber, led by the distinguished chair of the Committee on Ways and Means, but we also have to think about what might happen to the stabilization fund going forward. And what might happen to the stabilization fund going forward, and this is the reason that we have a stabilization fund, is that revenues may not be sufficient to support the essential functions of state government. And so it's our responsibility and our obligation to ensure that the stabilization fund be as healthy as it can possibly be. And not only does it remain at $8 billion, but we do everything in our power to continue to grow it. And that's important because we know that the expenditures of state government have been growing at an incredibly fast pace, at incredibly intense levels over the last 10 years. So we see that expenditures are going up. We have a chart for this. I'm not sure if the minority prop shop will be able to get it here in time for this discussion, but we see growth in expenditures growing at a very, very high rate. And that means it's important that the stabilization fund continue to grow to be able to support a potential gap between what we are collecting and what we are spending. Now, of course, there is another prong to this, and we'd be happy to talk about this at another date, but the other prong is actually trying to control our state spending and trying to reduce the gap in that way. But that's a discussion for another day. The discussion for today is what is the prudent course for us with regard to our stabilization fund. And on the matter of taking some of the interest under certain conditions, which are important in this bill, there are guardrails in this bill, taking some of the interest from the stabilization fund and using it to leverage federal funds, that's important. And on that matter, we agree. It's also important that we continue to maintain the stabilization fund to the greatest extent possible. And there, I think we will have a respectful disagreement. But the point is, moving forward with this bill is important. But I want to start by asking my good friend a threshold question, which I think is important to clarify at the outset of this discussion. And that is, the current statute says that the threshold before there's a transfer in capital gains revenue into the stabilization fund is $1 billion. But in the bill that is now proposed before us, that number would be stricken and modified to a figure of approximately $1.479 billion. So I want to ask my good friend, in light of adjustments for inflation and what the statute currently says, in light of that, is that $1.479 million, and I'm not quoting the number faithfully, I know that, but is the number proposed in this bill an increase in the threshold beyond where we would normally be under the current statute? Thank you, Madam President.
Senator from Westport.
Thank you, Madam President, and through you to the members. That's a great question from the minority leader, and something that, again, just proves to me that you get into the weeds on this very complicated, detailed financial discussions. The current statute does say $1 billion. That would be indexed to the rate of inflation. So the $1.479 billion, again, don't quote me on that, but that number that is in this current bill reflects what the current, today's reality is. So we are starting from zero, starting from the same base.
Is it 1.47?
Thank you, Madam President. I think that's important, and I appreciate the gentleman's explanation. And I would also point out and hope the gentleman, and he may be able to nod relative to this, but I would hope the gentleman would agree that the bill that now pens before the Senate would maintain the adjustment for inflation that's in the current statute. So essentially what's happening here is the number that's recited in the bill is the $1 billion adjusted for inflation, and there's a provision that's retained in this bill from the current statute that would further adjust that number for inflation going forward. And Madam President, I wish that the cameras could focus on all the nods of agreement that are coming from the Ways and Means cluster, because it's rare to see so many nods of yes, and this is an historic day, and one which I appreciate, but I appreciate the agreement. So we are starting with an inflation-adjusted number, which does not change the threshold from what it would normally be, and we're continuing to adjust that for inflation. I think that's an important point, and I appreciate the gentleman's clarification of it.
Okay. The Senator from Westport.
Thank you, Madam President. We are starting from the same point that we would be, and I did notice as the gentleman from Gloucester was speaking that Minority Print Shop was hurriedly delivering some of their products. So we look forward to seeing what the minority party has to present for our consideration.
Number 3. Okay. Several amendments have come before us. Amendment number 3, filed by the senator from Essex, Senator Tarr, from 1st Essex and Middlesex, which the clerk will read.
Amendment number 3 by Mr. Tarr, deposits into the stabilization fund.
Senator from Essex, Senator.
Madam President, I move the Senate be in a brief recess.
Senate's in a brief recess. Senate will be in order, returning to amendment number 3, but before that, amendment number 1 has been withdrawn. Amendment number 2 is the technical, and returning to amendment number 3, Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Madam President, and through the members. I was a bit disappointed that amendment number 1 got withdrawn, given its sponsor. I was looking forward to hearing the elucidation of the distinguished chair now acting as Senate President. But, Madam President, that is the way that the amendments fall. So we are now, just for the clarification, edification of the members, on amendment number 3. And amendment number 3 seeks to capture the situation that I was describing just moments ago. And through the very rapid work of Minority Print Shop, we do have a visual aid. And this visual aid, which is going to be supported by a human resource as opposed to an easel, would indicate the amount of growth that has occurred in the state budget. So this is the General Appropriations Act, but not necessarily even other state spending, but just the GAA, commonly known as the state budget. And I know my good friend is very familiar with this. And what you can see, if you look at this chart, is the amount that the GAA has grown since 2020. And so you can see that in 2020, the GAA was at roughly $43.5 billion. There's a little bit more than that, but rough numbers, $43.5 billion. And in fiscal year 2024, the GAA was around $56 billion. So you can see, with this dramatic rate of increase that is occurring in the state budget, why it's important that we have a stabilization fund that has as many resources in it as possible. Again, we know that currently we are at an historically high rate of investment or amount of resources in the stabilization fund. It's in excess of $8 billion, but we need to consider that against the backdrop of two things. Number one, we see the rate of increase that we've been experiencing in the GAA, and some of us would argue that's part of the reason that we've had to have a course correction with the governor reducing the budget through her powers under Mass General Laws, Chapter 29, Section 9C. But it also needs to be remembered that if we continue that rate, and that rate is coincidental with a reduction in revenue, and I think it's been characterized most recently by a number of the folks around here responsible for writing budgets, that we're seeing a flat increase in revenue. If we continue to see that, then the delta between those two things, the growth in state spending and the collection of revenue, that delta reflects what we may need to call upon the stabilization fund to spend. I want to thank our Legislative Director, Ted, for his outstanding work in holding that chart up. I want to give him a break and let him put it down. If anybody wants to see it, you can visit Minority Crescent. And as always, selfies and photo ops are available at the conclusion of the session with that or any of our charts. But this is the point of concern. So the governor had asked us originally for the creation of the fund to be able to compete for federal funding. That's what I'll refer to informally as the first part of this bill. The second part of this bill was not in that request. And that's where we begin to see potential changes to the allocation of excess capital gains into the stabilization fund. And there are a number of different steps. They're based on the amount by which the collection of capital gains exceeds budgeted revenues. And I don't want to make this too complicated, so I'll leave it at that. Depending on the size of that number, the allocation in this bill to the stabilization fund changes. So the first allocation would be if the amount of excess is 10% or less. And in that case, the bill adopts the current statutory language that 90% would go into the stabilization fund, and then 5% would go into unfunded pension liability, and 5% would go into so-called OPEB, other post-employment benefits, and otherwise known in the bill as the State Retiree Benefits Trust Fund. That's language that's being used to take the place of OPEB. It's a more formal way of saying it. However, Madam President, in the later section that follows that, if the amount of excess capital gains exceeds 10%, but is less than 15%, now we have a dramatic change where the stabilization fund gets only 50% of that excess. 25% goes to the OPEB account, State Retiree Benefits Trust Fund, and 25% goes to the unfunded pension liability fund. The pension liability fund is its official name. And then, Madam President, if we are in even better times and the excess amount is between 15 and 22.5%, then only 10% goes to the stabilization fund. 10%. 10% against the backdrop of what we see in the trend of increases in state spending and the decreases in state revenue. And then, Madam President, we get to the final provision of this staircasing scheme that's included in the bill, where we have excess amounts that exceed 22.5% of budgeted state revenues for all budgeted funds. And in that case, Madam President, believe it or not, there is zero contribution to the stabilization fund. None. None. Now, to be fair, in that scenario, 50% of the funds would go to the OPEB account and 50% would go to the pension liability fund. Those are noble investments, and we should work to pay those down. But I would suggest at the current time, in the current context, that everyone would acknowledge of increasing state spending and decreasing state revenue, we should not ever contemplate a scenario where there is a zero contribution to the state stabilization fund. The gentleman from Westport has worked long and hard to get that fund to the healthy position that it's in. And we've been happy to work with him. We share that priority. At this point in time, at this particular moment, Madam President, we would argue that it would be ill-advised to contemplate any scenario where there is ever a zero contribution to the stabilization fund. Now, some might argue, well, at that point, we'll be so flush with cash because capital gains revenue will be so strong, it's in excess of 22.5% of budgeted funds. Well, that's exactly the time, Madam President, when you can afford to put a substantial amount of money into the stabilization fund and grow it. Because this is a bill, Madam President, that is statute. It is not a special act. It doesn't affect what's happening just this year or next year or the year after that. Unless it's changed, it remains in effect for perpetuity. And we may have years where we have substantial increases in capital gains revenue. I certainly hope we do. I know my good friend from Westport hopes we do. And we would encourage all investors to take note of that. But Madam President, we need to think about not the best case scenario, but the worst case scenario. And we need to think about the importance of maintaining a stabilization fund and continuing to increase it. And it is certainly important to pay down on OPEB and our unfunded pension liability, but I would point out that this is not the only mechanism by which we can do that. We oftentimes, in the budget, debate what we will do with the consolidated net surplus. That is just one tool by which we could appropriate additional funds into the stabilization fund. Now, the curious thing about this is that if we're in a situation where we're adjusting for inflation and increasing the threshold that goes into these accounts as opposed to the operating budget, that means we'll have more money in the operating budget. And if we are that flush with cash, we could appropriate money, as we have in the past, when we've had additional resources, into the OPEB account and into the unfunded liability for our pensions. But to put it into statute that would then need to be modified if we get into a difficult situation, we would argue is an inappropriate course, given everything we've done. And again, it's been bipartisan and it's required a lot of discipline, and it didn't have to happen that way. It happened that way because we consciously chose to make it that way. It would be a mistake to put into statute a scenario where there is a zero contribution to the stabilization fund. The amendment now before us, Madam President, would strike those mechanisms which deal with the appropriations into the stabilization fund and leave intact the statutory scheme that is currently on the books that got us to the point of having $8 billion in the stabilization fund, something that we should cling to as an important safeguard and something in terms of its statutory scheme that we should not risk changing. I hope the amendment is adopted, and I move that when a vote is taken on this matter, be taken.
The senator from Essex moves that when a vote be taken, it be taken by a standing vote. All those in favor, please stand. Sufficient number having stood.
No, just a standing vote.
Standing, okay. All those in favor, oh, were you standing or did you want to speak? Okay, the senator from Westport who's stretching wants to stretch his lungs, his vocal cords.
Thank you, Madam President, and through you to the members. Let me first say to the gentleman from Gloucester, the minority leader, you had a lot to say. You said a lot in your statement, 95% of which I completely and totally agree with, because through the course of these last 5 years, it was February of 19 that I was appointed chair of Ways and Means. We had $1.9 billion in our stabilization fund. It was my express goal to all my colleagues that I wanted to see that fund grow to at least 10%. 10% is the golden standard of general revenues in the stabilization fund balance. And remember, the measure that we're talking about is a percentage of the operating revenues. So it's not a fixed number. So as operating budgets increase, so there's a standard by which we need to have a balance increase in the stabilization fund. We currently stand close to 15%, a little north of $8 billion in that account. The other item that my colleagues hear me talking about all the time is our long-term fiscal outlook in the Commonwealth. It is measured by the amount of money in the stabilization fund, but it's also measured by our long-term liabilities. The two big ones, unfunded pension liability, stands about $41 billion in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and our OPEB, other post-employment liabilities, which currently stand at about $13 billion. Now, we have very good, strong ratings from all the major bonding agencies. Wall Street does pay attention to this. So why should we pay attention to Wall Street? Because we are a highly indebted state. We in this body debate environmental bond bills, higher ed bond bills, transportation bond bills, we debate all these bond bills, meaning we are providing authorization for the governor to go out and borrow money in order to invest in long-term capital projects. And how much we can actually put to work of those bond authorizations is based upon the amount of debt service that we all appropriate annually. The better the bonding rating, the more money we can borrow, the more money we can spend, the more money we can invest in these important projects. It's very, very important. Just last year, Moody's increased Commonwealth's bond rating to AA1, which is the second highest available. The highest is AAA. It is my goal to get the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to AAA. What are the two things that they ping us on, that they kind of take some points off on? The amount of our unfunded pension liability and the amount of our OPEB, and actually the amount of all of our long-term debts. Now, long-term debt, I will argue with them, and we have argued with them, as has, at least I know, the former governor and the treasurers argued with our rating agencies. It's not really fair, because we in Massachusetts assume the debt load for all our local municipalities. Most other states do not do that. So that's not really fair, that we assume that debt. But irregardless, two things that we can take action on is unfunded pension liabilities in OPEB. I'm very familiar with how quickly the state's general operating budget has increased over the last 3 years. We in Massachusetts have seen, like just about every other state, have seen robust revenue growth during the pandemic, during the time of unprecedented infusion of federal dollars. Close to $400 billion federal dollars have flowed into the Commonwealth of Massachusetts since the pandemic. Has come into the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in many ways and shapes. Our business community, the employer community, hundreds of billions of dollars in so-called PPP loans that turned into PPP grants. That's the direct infusion of cash into the business community. Our employees, through supplemental unemployment insurance, with $600 a week supplement on top of their normal, then it went down to $300 a week, but billions of dollars of supplemental unemployment insurance. We in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, over $5 billion in so-called ARPA funds. Our communities, our local communities, both their municipal side and their school sides, hundreds of billions of dollars of ARPA funds going to local communities. All that money was infused into the economy. It worked its way through the economy until a portion thereof filtered its way down into state tax revenue. And we saw robust tax growth. Our budgets reflected the fact that we had robust tax growth. We were also very responsible with this robust tax growth, where we were able to build our stabilization fund to $8+ billion. We were able to build a transitional escrow fund, which is like a state fund on top of the state fund, for the state fund. We were able to put money into reserves for the Student Opportunity Act, known shorter-term liabilities that we know that we have to commit in the next few years in order to meet the obligations of the Student Opportunity Act. We put money into Early Education and Care Trust Fund because we are focused now beyond K through 12. We are focused on early education and care. And just yesterday, we had a press conference on post-secondary education and providing the ability for residents of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to attend community college without tuition or fees. So we've been very, very responsible, and I've been very, very public that I'm going to be very protective of those reserve funds going forward. We worked hard, collectively, responsibly, in building up these reserve funds, and I'm going to be very, very protective going forward before we dip into those reserve funds. Keep in mind, the governor did have to make a revenue adjustment of about $1 billion for the FY24 budget. It still reflects growth. There's still revenue growth over the last fiscal year. But it's revenue growth at about 1.5%, not the revenue growth that we've been experiencing of 7 to 9% a year. Those days are gone. Those days happen because of the infusion of hundreds of billions of dollars of federal money into our economy. Not circulating within our economy, but new money being infused into our economy. So we are not, and I've said this before and I will say it again, we are not at a point in our budgetary deliberations to be considering dipping into the stabilization fund. GDP continues to grow. We are not in a recession. Our economy is growing. Unemployment is less than 3%. We are not in any way, shape, or form in a recession. The economy continues to grow. As a matter of fact, every economist I've spoken to expects the economy to begin accelerating again towards the third quarter of this year as interest rates come down. I think, and this is where the gentleman and I disagree, I think it is very prudent and the right thing to do to consider, beyond just the balance of the stabilization fund, which is measured again on a percentage of our operating budget, not on a fixed number, to dealing with the other long-term liabilities, namely unfunded pension liabilities and OPEB. That is why we are proposing in this bill that as our stabilization fund balances exceed certain percentage of the operating, not fixed numbers, certain percentage of the operating budget, we expend less in the balance of the stabilization fund and more into OPEB and unfunded pension liability. Keep in mind that this absolutely maintains the fact that we only use excess capital gains for one of three reasons: state fund, OPEB, unfunded pension liability. We still maintain that. We are not diverting these monies to anything else but that, and I think it is a very rational, very responsible, and very forward-thinking thing to do in order to adjust this schedule, and I hope the gentleman's amendment is rejected.
Thank you, Madam President. I note with interest that you were actually using your phone to take notes because the volume of information here exceeds what you could write manually. I do want to thank the gentleman, and I actually think that it's a testament to this body that we can have the kind of discussion that's happening in this chamber right now. And it always pains me to disagree with my good friend, particularly when we agree on so much, and even more particularly when we agree so much on the imperative nature of fiscal discipline. And again, I would commend him and would thank him for his partnership. And I would say that on a going forward basis, we will continue to partner with my good friend from Westport in insisting that we protect the balances in the stabilization fund and the transitional escrow account. I would point out, however, that there has already been a proposal to draw down on the transitional escrow account. So that is something that's very real, and it's something that's been put on the table already. I would also point out, Madam President, that the gentleman is correct, that we have had a situation where there have been billions of dollars infused into the Commonwealth's economy at a macro level by the federal government. And I think he and I would agree that we are not likely to see that again, which also makes it important that we have a stabilization fund that takes into account that that backstop may not be available. And I would further point out that he made some very good points about the example that we've set about putting money away when we've had it for things that are important, like the reserve accounts for things that we created that we didn't have to do. Those weren't in statute. Those were a result of the bipartisan collaboration in this chamber and the leadership of my good friend from Westport to say that we know that we're in an extraordinary situation of having extra resources, and we're going to put them into accounts like things like the Student Opportunity Act and reserve accounts for child care. We do those oftentimes when we have the ability to do it because we have additional funds. You won't find the requirement to do that in any statute. What you do find is the requirement that we put 90% of excess funds into the stabilization fund. And that's why we have a stabilization fund of $8 billion. And so we should continue to employ the statutory language, the current statutory language that got us to that $8 billion, and then continue to look for opportunities to pay down with additional resources our OPEB account and our unfunded pension liability account. The gentleman himself has explained that when we've had the opportunity to do that, we've done it. We've done it with those reserve accounts, and we should still continue to do it. The lesson to be learned here is that the obligation to the stabilization fund should remain unchanged, and we should continue to stay on the path that got us to the point we're at, and we should also reserve to ourselves the ability to use discretionary funds, as we have in the past, to anticipate things that we may not be able to afford in the future, and to pay down our unfunded liabilities so that we can continue to earn those good bond ratings, which are due in no small part to the fiscal discipline that has come from this chamber. So in my humble opinion, and in the opinion that is expressed in this amendment, the stabilization fund should always be mandatory, and we shouldn't have statutory language that requires us to do the other things, but we should do them in the absence of that statutory language as we have in the past. The stabilization fund should be required. The other things should be dependent on our judgment at the time when we have those additional resources to pay down those liabilities. And I would posit that that would be equally as important to the ratings agencies as having a statutory requirement that may never be able to be met, because by the gentleman's own admission, we may not be able to get to the point of the excesses that are contemplated in the scheme that's in the current bill. I hope the amendment is adopted, and regardless of the outcome of this debate, I hope that we'll continue to work together to maintain the fiscal health, the stability of the Commonwealth, and to protect the stabilization fund and the reserve accounts that we've worked so hard to build. Thank you, Madam President.
The gentleman has asked that the vote be taken by a standing vote. All those standing with him, please rise. Opposed? Three in the affirmative, 9 in the negative. The amendment is not adopted. Moving along, amendment number 4, filed by the senator from 1st Essex and Middlesex, and the clerk will read.
Amendment number 4 by Mr. Tarr, adjusting for inflation.
Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Madam President. Given the explanation of the distinguished chair of the Committee on Ways and Means that we do have an inflationary adjustment contained in the language of the bill that pens before the Senate, I move to withdraw the pending amendment.
To withdraw the amendment, any opposition? Hearing no opposition, the amendment is withdrawn. Amendment number 5, the same senator from Essex and Middlesex, busy today. Senator Tarr has filed an amendment the clerk will read.
Amendment number 5 by Mr. Tarr, balance on stabilization fund.
The senator from Essex.
Thank you, Madam President, and through you to the members. I'm only trying to fill the void that occurred when you withdrew your amendments. Madam President, this amendment would merely increase the requirement before any transfer occurs from 10 to 15%. It's in keeping with good budgeting, and it's a prudent act, and I hope that the Senate will endorse this approach. I hope the amendment is adopted.
Question comes on adoption of the amendment. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The noes have it, and the amendment is not adopted. The same senator from Essex and Middlesex, Senator Tarr, has filed amendment number 6. The clerk will read.
Amendment number 6 by Mr. Tarr, transfer notice.
Madam President,
Essex.
I move the Senate be in a brief recess.
Senate is in a brief. From Essex, Senator Tarr.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Madam President, and through you to the members. Madam President, point of parliamentary inquiry.
The point of parliamentary.
Madam President, this amendment and the succeeding amendment propose that information be reported to the clerks of the House and the Senate. Madam President, would it be the case if they were adopted and the clerks were in receipt of that information that it would be publicly posted electronically for inspection?
The answer is yes.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I further rise to speak to Amendment 6.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Madam President. So, Madam President, one of the important elements of this bill is the language of a legislative term that we use sparingly, and that is the term without further appropriation. And in 2 places in this bill, a tremendous amount of funding is placed within the sole control of the executive branch without further appropriation. And those that are students of the Constitution know that the power to appropriate is generally reserved to the legislature. And so we should be very cautious when we delegate that authority or when we abdicate that authority. And so this bill, with regard to the funding that will be in the new account that's being created, will be able to be spent by the administration without further appropriation. So we, who generally scrutinize every account and are very careful as to how it is appropriated, are now saying that with regard to this amount of money, which I think all of us would agree will ultimately number in the billions of dollars, we're going to say to the administration, you can spend that, and we are not part of that process any longer after the adoption of this bill. And so when you're contemplating that conveyance of authority, it's imperative that there be a counterbalance, that there be a check. And what this amendment proposes is that the Secretary of Administration and Finance, before spending money from the Commonwealth Federal Matching and Debt Reduction Fund, before money be spent from that fund, we be given a very modest 30 days advance notice. So that by doing this and requiring this notice, we are not creating a situation where the administration can't move forward. But what we are creating is a situation where we know well in advance what's going to happen before any such transfers are made. It's a reasonable check and balance on the power that's being conveyed in this bill so that it is not unbridled authority. It's authority that comes with the responsibility for accountability and transparency, and the possibility that if the proposed spending is not something that we find to be appropriate, we would have the ability to act. So, Madam President, I know that in this chamber we have oftentimes successfully championed transparency and accountability. This amendment and its successor amendment certainly are consistent with that. I hope that the amendment is adopted, and I move that when a vote is taken on this matter be taken by a call of the yeas and nays.
The gentleman has moved that a vote, when a vote be taken by a call of the yeas and nays. All those in favor, please stand. Sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays will be called. Senator from Westport.
Thank you, Madam President, and I rise in support of the gentleman's amendment. I appreciate and thank him for filing such an amendment that would provide us in the legislature with formal notice prior to the spending of these dollars, and both this amendment and the following amendment both provide that opportunity and ability, and I ask that members join he and I in voting yes on this amendment.
The clerk will call the roll.
Michael J. Barrett. Michael D. Brady. William N. Brownsberger. Nick Collins. Joanne M. Comerford. Yes. Cynthia Stone Cream. Yes. Brendan P. Crichton. Yes. John J. Cronin. Yes. Julian Sear. Sal N. DiDomenico. Peter J. Durant. Yes. Lydia Edwards. James B. Eldridge. Yes. Ryan C. Fatman. Yes. Paul R. Feeney. Yes. Barry R. Feingold. Cindy F. Friedman. Yes. Adam Gomez. Patricia D. Jalen. Yes. John F. Keenan. Yes. Edward J. Kennedy. Robin K. Kennedy. Yes. Jason M. Lewis. Yes. Joan B. Lovely. Yes. Paul W. Mark. Liz Miranda. Yes. Mark C. Montigny. Michael O. Moore. Susan L. Moran. Patrick M. O'Connor. Jacob R. Oliveira. Mark R. Pacheco. Pavel Payano. Yes. Rebecca L. Roush. Yes. Michael J. Rodericks. Yes. Michael F. Rush. Yes. Bruce E. Tarr. Yes. Walter F. Timmelty. Yes. John C. Velas.
Senator from Cambridge, Senator DiDomenico. Do we have to move to the senators?
Sal N. DiDomenico votes yes. Lydia Edwards votes yes. Nick Collins votes yes. William N. Brownsberger votes yes. Michael D. Brady votes yes.
In accordance with Rule 57D, the court officer will ascertain the vote of several members and record them.
Michael J. Barrett. Julian Sear.
Yes.
Yes. Barry R. Feingold.
Yes.
Yes. Adam Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Edward J. Kennedy.
Yes.
Yes. Paul W. Mark.
Yes.
Yes. Mark C. Montigny.
Yes.
Yes. Michael O'More.
Yes.
Yes. Susan L. Moran.
Yes.
Yes. Patrick M. O'Connor.
Yes.
Yes. Jacob R. Oliveira.
Yes.
Yes. Mark R. Pacheco.
Yes.
Yes. John C. Vilas.
Yes.
Yes.
Have all
Mark said Barrett's not voting.
all members been recorded? Yes.
Yes.
30 members having voted in the positive and none in the negative, the amendment is adopted. Amendment number 7, again by Senator from Essex, Senator Tarr, and the clerk will read.
Amendment number 7 by Mr. Tarr, notice on federal matching funds.
Senator.
Thank you, Madam President, and through the members. I'll be brief, Madam President, because this amendment has language that mirrors the preceding amendment. The difference is that the preceding amendment related to transfers between the funds. This amendment refers to expending for particular federal grants for which funds are spent as match. It provides a similar reporting requirement and will be subject to the similar posting requirement that the clerk has confirmed exists to put this information on the internet. I hope that the amendment is adopted, and I move that when a vote is taken on this matter, it be taken by a call of the...
The gentleman has asked that when a vote be taken, it be taken by a call of the yeas and nays. All those in support, please stand. A sufficient number have arisen. A roll call will be called. The senator from...
Thank you, Madam President. Just very briefly, to reiterate, I ask members to please join us in voting yes on this amendment.
The clerk will call the roll.
Michael J. Barrett. Michael D. Brady. William N. Brownsberger. Yes. Nick Collins. Joanne M. Comerford. Yes. Cynthia Stone Cream. Yes. Brendan P. Crichton. John J. Cronin. Yes. Julian Sear. Sal N. D. Domenico. Yes. Peter J. Durant. Yes. Lydia Edwards. Yes. James B. Eldridge. Yes. Ryan C. Fatman. Yes. Paul R. Feeney. Yes. Barry R. Feingold. Cindy F. Friedman. Yes. Adam Gomez. Patricia D. Jalen. Yes. John F. Keenan. Yes. Edward J. Kennedy. Robin K. Kennedy. Yes. Jason M. Lewis. Yes. Joan B. Lovely. Paul W. Mark. Liz Miranda. Mark C. Montigny. Michael O'More. Susan L. Moran. Patrick M. O'Connor. Jacob R. Oliveira. Mark R. Pacheco. Pavel Payano. Yes. Rebecca L. Roush. Yes. Michael J. Rodericks. Yes. Michael F. Rush. Bruce E. Tarr. Yes. Walter F. Timmelty. Yes. John C. Vilas.
Members, Senator from
Nick Collins votes yes.
Lovely.
Joan B. Lovely votes yes. Michael D. Brady votes yes.
the Senate Rule 57D. The court officer will ascertain the vote of several members and record them.
Michael J. Barrett. Brendan P. Crichton.
Yes.
Yes. Julian Sear.
Yes.
Yes. Barry R. Feingold.
Yes.
Yes. Adam Gomez.
Yes.
Yes. Edward J. Kennedy.
Yes.
Yes. Paul W. Mark.
Yes.
Yes. Liz Miranda.
Yes.
Yes. Mark C. Montigny.
Yes.
Yes. Michael O. Moore.
Yes.
Yes. Susan L. Moran.
Yes.
Yes. Patrick M. O'Connor.
Yes.
Yes. Jacob R. Oliveira.
Yes.
Yes. Mark R. Pacheco.
Yes.
Yes. Michael F. Rush.
Yes.
Yes. John C. Velas.
Yes.
Yes.
Have all members been recorded?
Yes.
38 members having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. The amendment is adopted. Amendment number 8, filed from the senator from Norfolk, Worcester, Middlesex. Senator Roush, the clerk will read.
Amendment number 8 by Ms. Roush, closing revenue gaps and corporate tax loopholes.
The senator from Norfolk.
Thank you very much, Madam President. And as this is the first time I am rising today, I want to begin by offering my gratitude to our Senate President and to our Chair of Ways and Means and their respective staffs for their deep and diligent work on all matters pertaining to budget and revenue, and frankly, all matters that come before the floor, including the bill before us today. As we've heard already in today's debate, we know about our current fiscal picture. Our governor announced a near $1 billion shortfall for the instant fiscal year. We've received 9C cuts that have impacted communities in every district of ours all throughout the Commonwealth. In my district, that's impacting playground improvements and town anniversary celebrations, town seal redesigns, similar to the redesign effort that we, through the Commonwealth, for the Commonwealth, are doing, and even into 3 different fire departments for hoses, radios, and other equipment. Those are the things that are being cut by half. I don't know about you, but I can't figure out how to buy half a fire hose. We also know that we have a, shall we say, less than rosy outlook for the forthcoming fiscal year 25. Now, the base bill before us offers a good and creative way to solve the problem. Not entirely, as we know, but it's an important piece of the solution, and I'll be voting yes on this bill today. But again, it doesn't fully solve our revenue problem. And that's why I filed Amendment 8, closing revenue gaps and corporate tax loopholes. This amendment would accomplish one thing. Let's start by setting the stage a little bit. A portion of the profits that multinational corporations doing business in Massachusetts make are shifted to offshore tax havens. Just a portion of the profits of multinational, often multi-billion-dollar corporations doing business here in MA, that in Massachusetts, that money gets shifted into offshore tax havens. This amendment would reverse what was done in 2018, when a decision was made to decouple the way that Massachusetts taxes just that portion of the profits of the super duper earning companies doing business here in Massachusetts. In 2018, a decision was made to decouple the way we tax that amount of money, that particular money, from the way the federal government taxes that particular portion of money. This is known as the Global Intangible Low Taxed Income, or GILTI. The federal government taxes GILTI at 50%, not 15, 50, 50, 50%. Not just the federal government, several other states also do this, including New Hampshire, our dear neighbor to the north, which has come up many times in the last several months as we have debated the budget and revenues and a tax package. Massachusetts, however, because of that decision that was made in 2018, taxes GILTI at only 5%, a tenth of what so many others are using as their tax rate for those GILTI funds. Passing this corporate revenue reform will net our coffers upwards of $500 million per year, every year. Is it a full solution? Nope. Of course not. Is it an important step in the right direction? Absolutely, without question. We need the revenue to fund the supports that our constituents, our businesses, and our communities need. And frankly, the supports and infrastructure that they expect from our state government. We all in this chamber know that we have a multitude of areas of necessary investment: housing, healthcare, early education and childcare, safe and reliable roads, bridges, and public transportation. Indeed, the point of the Fair Share Amendment, which we recently passed, wasn't just equity, it was also because we actually need the money for education and transportation. We need the money. Then we got the Baker bucket of debt, which we have had to clean up, which he left for us as he walked out the door. A 14% single-year increase in special education costs. A $2.5 billion federal money problem that Baker mismanaged and misused for unemployment benefits. Now, I've filed this amendment before, and it's also filed as a standalone bill. And I have spoken about this measure before from this very seat. Indeed, I spoke about it just a few months ago when we passed the individual tax package. And I voted yes on that bill, and I would do it again now. There were so many good pieces in that bill that put money back into the pockets of our constituents, money that they are going to feel this year, this calendar year. But I said it then, and I'll say it again now. We have to grapple with backfilling the revenue loss for our state coffers. And that moment of grappling has arrived, my friends. It is here. $1 billion down in the current fiscal year. 9 seat cuts across the Commonwealth, not just for local priorities, but several state-wide impacts as well, including to several nonprofits who are doing deeply essential work for the people who call Massachusetts home. The moment has arrived. It is true that previously the situation was less strained, but now we simply cannot afford not to pass this policy. And again, I want to recap what this policy does. It closes a corporate tax loophole that is exploited by some of the wealthiest multinational companies operating in Massachusetts. This is a policy that has been adopted not only by our federal government, but by 14 other states in the nation, including 4 of our New England partners: Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island. Those 14 states and the federal government tax guilty at 50%, whereas we in Massachusetts tax it at only 5%. This is an opportunity to uplift our communities without negatively impacting working families and small businesses. If we don't increase our revenues, the only other option is to put services and infrastructure on the chopping block. That's it. So come budget time in just a few months, what are we going to cut? Or rather, what else are we going to cut? Housing, transportation, healthcare, public health and safety, higher ed, special ed, child care, DCR, DCF, agriculture and food security, universal school meals, we're going to cut that. Climate action in its multitude of facets, from coastlines and open spaces to charging stations and carbon sequestration. And of course, that all doesn't touch what we already haven't been funding, like reducing public transit rates to increase ridership, east-west rail, solar panels on government buildings. How about full dental benefits for Mass Health participants? Oh, we don't have that yet either. How about tuition-free full-day kindergarten in every community in the Commonwealth, which amazingly in 2024, we still don't have, because we can't pay for it, and the communities can't either. How about last mile broadband? I know several of you in the Western Massachusetts delegation are feeling that pain. Water. Water. By at least one estimate, we need a minimum of $1 billion to invest in water access and quality across the state. That's not including the money we need to get the lead out of schools, assist private well owners, and other water needs. In the committee I chair on Environment and Natural Resources, we held 1/5 of our hearing time pertinent to water. It should be pretty obvious to all of us that we can't survive without clean water. But we don't have the money. We don't have the money. Air pollution, reducing reliance on fossil fuels, including through the use of plastics, and particularly single-use plastics, and improving recycling and waste management systems. We're not spending on those things either. These pieces, and so many more, are necessary infrastructure. And the only way that we pay for that infrastructure, the very infrastructure that makes Massachusetts both attractive and competitive, is with revenue. That is the only way we pay for it. And as we know, that's revenue that we do not have. But it's revenue we so clearly need. And we need to generate it without putting the burden on the backs of our constituents and small businesses who are already scraping to make ends meet. We must have this debate in this chamber, on this floor, about revenue. It is our obligation to our constituents and the communities that we all represent to have that debate and ensure that we have the revenue that they need for the supports, investments, and infrastructure upon which they rely. So I'm here, and I will continue to be right here to do the deep collaborative revenue work that lies ahead of us, and it does lie ahead of us. We cannot put it off any longer. Indeed, that's a perspective shared by others in this chamber, as is evident by the significant number of colleagues who have co-sponsored this amendment. And I'm grateful to all of them for their partnership and their support. Sadly, today is not going to be the day where we pass this policy, because this bill originated here, in this chamber, and not in the House, with our friends and colleagues across the hall. This amendment would raise revenue. Pursuant to our Constitution, money bills must originate in the House. So unfortunately, I must ask unanimous consent to withdraw this amendment. But rest assured, my friends, that I will be back to file this again and again and again until we get it done, along with other aspects of necessary revenue reform. It doesn't take an economist to figure out the basic policy matter here. Our revenues are down, cuts have been made, and we already didn't have enough before those cuts or the forecast for fiscal year 25. We need the revenue. We need it now. Let's get it done. Thank you, Madam President.
The senator has asked, Senator from Bedford, Senator Eldridge.
Through you to the members, and I want to thank the gentlelady from Needham for her leadership in filing this amendment that would seek to establish raising progressive tax revenue to address what appears to be a deficit for the FY24 budget and a growing concern about what our budget will be in the FY25 budget. So I want to thank her for her leadership, and I first want to highlight the fact that on a positive note, we have really seen the benefits of passing progressive tax revenue from the passing of the mass fair share first constitutional amendment by many of us here, and then approved by the voters last year, 2 years ago. And what we've been able to do with that revenue has been extraordinary. Of course, the mass fair share amendment was focused by the constitutional amendment on investments in transportation and education. We were able to, in the FY24 budget, do the beginnings of free community college. We were able to significantly invest in regional transit authorities. We were able to begin to get back to investment for the MBTA, as well as make sure that investments, continued investments in the Student Opportunity Act continue with that historic law. And I want to lift that up because it's something that I think we really need to celebrate and make that connection, because when we pass progressive revenue, not only is it more fair, but it raises significant amount of revenue. The estimate, it's my understanding, for the FY25 budget is we will have about $1.3 billion to again invest in transportation and education. And so I would argue this is in the same line of thinking of finding a way to make our tax system more fair and to direct those target investments to things that I know we all care very deeply about. Now, the FY24 budget is something that I know that we're all very proud about. It was in many ways a historic budget, first in terms of some of the investments we made. I mentioned the beginnings of free community college. We also passed and established universal school meals as a law. We passed the no-cost calls for incarcerated people, arguably the strongest law in the country on no-cost calls for incarcerated people. We passed the in-state tuition bill for the children of undocumented immigrants, something that has been fought for well over 20 years. And we also began to, again, make continued investments in the Student Opportunity Act, something I know that is important to each of our communities. Those are all things that, first of all, were requested by our constituents, by advocates, that people that care deeply about the Commonwealth just as we do, and were able to deliver an historic budget last year. Now, sadly, because of reduced capital gains revenue, always some fluctuation in some of the more unstable revenue sources, Governor Healy this week, of course, announced a $297 million in 9C budget cuts, and already talking about downgrading the FY25 budget. And that's extremely concerning because, as we all know, just level funding for all these programs that we fought so hard for is not progress in Massachusetts. Every budget year, especially given the increased costs on things like food, to energy, to housing, we need to make sure to increase each of the areas in our state budget year to year. And so when you hear discussions about level funding for anything, including local aid, including Chapter 70 aid, that's actually a cut for our communities. The backdrop, then, is what are the realities of so many of our constituents. Because as proud as I am of the state budget, as proud as I am of many of the bills that have passed, whether last year or the previous session, we also know that bills that we're hoping to pass this year, policies we're hoping to establish in the FY25 budget, could be curtailed by this downgrade in what state revenues are coming in. What is the state, if you will, of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? So despite many of our best efforts, there are 1 million workers in Massachusetts that earn the minimum wage, which thankfully is $15 an hour, but we know that those increases over the past few years have essentially gone to housing rental increases. We have a state transportation system, while seeing a little bit of light at the tunnel, an incredibly broken system, whether you're talking about the MBTA, whether you're talking about traffic into Boston or Cambridge or Worcester, whether you're talking about the state of many of our roads and bridges. Income and racial inequality has gotten worse post-pandemic, and Massachusetts already had among the highest gaps in income and racial inequality in the country. We have a healthcare and human services system that is imploding. And despite our very impressive and devoted efforts on education in K through 12, we have continued pressures on vocational schools, on what kind of instruction is happening in the K through 12 schools, whether it's universal early education or full-day kindergarten. All of those things are pressures that we're hearing from our constituents. So when we hear the discussion about level funding, we hear about, from a recent Boston Globe editorial, that this was a right-sizing of the budget in terms of the cuts that have happened and the downgrade of revenues for this coming year. Let's accept, let's admit, let's look into the mirror and recognize those are political choices, and therefore those are moral choices. There's a famous quote that says the reflection of the state of a society is often reflected in the budget, that the budget is a moral document, a moral vehicle. And so the reality is that the tax package that we passed last year, which had incredibly important investments, many of which I'm proud of, that also means that that's $1 billion that will not be available for the FY25 budget and going forward year after year. And so what do we do to make up that gap? And I would argue that the amendment and the bill filed by the gentlelady from Needham is part of the solution to get there, to make our tax system more fair, to address the realities that I talked about for so many of our constituents, and to make sure that the progress that we made last session and last year's budget, a budget, again, not only with historic increases in investments, but also some major policy provisions, that we don't backtrack on that progress and we have just as strong of a budget this year and just as strong of a portfolio of policy bills that make a dramatic difference in the lives of our constituents, especially middle class, working class, and low-income families that have, of course, particular challenges to have a good standard of living and a good quality of life here in Massachusetts. So again, I thank her for filing this amendment. I look forward to debates in other pieces of legislation, the budget, on this key issue. but I want to stand here and say that I fully support raising revenue this year, so long as it's progressive revenue and in a substantial way that will make a dramatic difference in not only making sure that we prevent budget cuts that could be coming down the line, but that we're making investments to continue to make a positive influence on the lives of our constituents. Thank you.
The senator from Worcester, Norfolk, and Middlesex has asked for unanimous consent to withdraw the amendment. Are there any objections? No objections. The amendment is withdrawn. Amendment number 9, filed by Senator Timothy. The clerk will read.
Amendment number 9 by Mr. Timothy, prioritizing jobs, growth, sustainability, and equity.
Senator.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you to the members, this amendment, prioritizing jobs, growth, sustainability, and equity, brings into focus a vision of what our Commonwealth can be and should be if we in this bill invest in our future. The underlying bill will bring more reassurance to allocation of funds by being clear on what targets can be aimed for, by replacing ambiguity with specific language that prioritizes projects that create jobs, boost economic development, and protect the environment. We can and will be able to ensure that this prosperity touches every corner, every community, and every citizen, Madam President. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and other federal laws mentioned in the bill offer us a once-in-a-generation opportunity not just to fix bridges and pave roads, which we would all agree are very important, but to build a Massachusetts that fosters economic vitality. My amendment strives to do just that, Madam President. It promotes building a more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable future for all of us. In short, jobs, good-paying, stable jobs, are the lifeblood of families and the core of our communities. My amendment prioritizes projects that breathe life into our economy, not just in bustling metropolises, but in those forgotten corners of our Commonwealth where hope sometimes, sadly, seems as scarce as resources. Specifically, this amendment directs the Secretary of Administration and Finance to make expenditures from the fund by giving priority to projects that meet the following criteria. And this is straight from the amendment. First, will create or retain jobs in the Commonwealth. Second, will promote economic development, particularly in economically distressed areas. Third, will protect or enhance the environment, including, but not limited to, clean energy and climate initiatives, including coastal resilience and climate adaptation. Moreover, the Secretary will also have to consider the following reasonable factors in making expenditures, including the extent to which a project will create or retain jobs in the construction and building trades. Moreover, the extent to which the project will utilize recycled materials or energy-efficient technologies. In addition, the extent to which the project will benefit small businesses, including but not limited to women, minority, and disabled veteran contractors. Finally, the extent to which the project will serve the needs of low-income communities. Let's take action in this bill to add more specificity as to the allocation of our investments in infrastructure, in our environment, and in our people, our most valuable resource here in the Commonwealth. This development and also protects the environment. It focuses on jobs and opportunity by prioritizing projects that create jobs in construction and other trades. Bless you, Madam President. Furthermore, it lifts up economically distressed areas, small businesses, and low-income communities, all with transparent guidelines for project selection and infrastructure investments. Because every citizen and every community here in the Commonwealth deserve a stake in our future that we are building, I urge each and every member of this chamber respectfully to support this amendment. Thank you, Madam President.
Question comes on adoption amendment. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The noes have it. The amendment is not adopted. Amendment number 10, same senator, Senator Timothy's filed an amendment. The clerk will read.
Amendment number 10 by Mr. Timothy, promoting opportunity for women and minority-owned businesses and disabled veterans.
The senator from Norfolk, Senator Timothy.
Madam President, thank you, and through you to the members. The Massachusetts State Senate, as we are all proudly aware, has a long history of championing the development and enhancement of those who are economically challenged and underrepresented. Section 5 of this bill delineates that the Commonwealth Federal Matching and Debt Reduction Fund should align with and reflect the goals of federal laws such as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021 and the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. In short, this amendment promoting opportunity for women and minority-owned businesses and disabled veterans amplifies those priorities and codifies our collective interest in promoting participation from women and minority-owned businesses and disabled veterans in infrastructure projects. Specifically, the amendment requires the Secretary to track and record the participation of those underrepresented groups. With that, respectfully, Madam President, I urge the members to adopt this amendment because it enhances transparency and accountability, builds a more inclusive Commonwealth, promotes data-driven policymaking, and invests in our future inclusively. Specifically, Madam President, in regards to transparency and accountability, this amendment shines a light on women and minority-owned businesses and disabled veteran participation in infrastructure projects. By identifying potential disparities, ensuring fairness, and promoting participation from traditionally underrepresented groups in infrastructure projects. Moreover, in regards to building a more inclusive Commonwealth, by tracking women and minority-owned businesses and disabled American veterans' involvement, we can work towards ensuring that everyone has a chance to benefit from economic opportunities. Furthermore, Madam President, in regards to data-driven policymaking, the collected data will inform future decisions made by us here in the Senate and allow us to target resources effectively and promote greater participation from underrepresented groups. Finally, in regards to investing in our future, Madam President, supporting those projects strengthens our economy, creates jobs, and fosters a more diverse and thriving infrastructure sector. In short, Madam President, this amendment builds on the strength of those federal acts and allows us to move towards fulfilling the equity promises that we have made while empowering economic growth by leveraging federal investments. With that, Madam President, I thank you and respectfully urge a favorable vote for my
Question
colleague.
comes on adoption amendment. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, the opposed have it, and the amendment is not adopted. And a brief recess. Weren't we going Senate will be in order, returning to amendment number two, filed by the senator from Bristol, Senator Rodericks. The clerk will.
Amendment number 2 by Mr. Rodericks, corrective amendment.
Question comes on adoption amendment. All those in favor and say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Now, question now comes on adoption, ordering the bill as amended to a third reading. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is ordered to a third reading. Third reading.
An act to provide for competitiveness and infrastructure investment in Massachusetts, Senate number 2548.
Question now comes on passing the bill to be engrossed. All the yeas in favor, yeas and nays having been previously requested, the clerk will call the roll.
238. Michael J. Barrett. Michael D. Brady. William N. Brownsberger. Yes. Yes. Nick Collins. Joanne M. Comerford. Yes. Cynthia Stone Cream. Yes. Brendan P. Crichton. John J. Cronin. Yes. Yes. Julian Sear. Salen D. Domenico. Peter J. Durant. Lydia Edwards. James B. Eldridge. Yes. Ryan C. Fatman. Yes. Paul R. Feeney. Yes. Barry R. Feingold. Cindy F. Friedman. Yes. Adam Gomez. Patricia D. Jalen. Yes. John F. Keenan. Yes. Edward J. Kennedy. Robin K. Kennedy. Yes. Jason M. Lewis. Yes. Joan B. Lovely. Paul W. Mark. Liz Miranda. Mark C. Montigny. Michael O'More. Susan L. Moran. Patrick M. O'Connor. Jacob R. Oliveira. Mark R. Pacheco. Pavel Payano. Yes. Rebecca L. Roush. Yes. Michael J. Rodricks. Yes. Yes. Michael F. Rush.
Yes.
Yes. Bruce E. Tarr. Yes. Yes. Walter F. Timmelty. Yes. Yes. John C. Velas. Joan B. Lovely votes yes. Sal N. D. Domenico votes yes.
Thank you, Madam President. Wish to be reported in the affirmative.
Michael D. Brady votes yes. Peter J. Durant votes yes.
Under the Senate rules, the chair will announce the votes of several members.
Michael J. Barrett. Yes. Julian Sear. Yes. Lydia Edwards. Yes. Barry R. Feingold. Yes. Adam Gomez. Yes. Edward J. Kennedy. Yes. Paul W. Mark. Yes. Mark C. Montigny. Yes. Michael O'More. Yes. Patrick M. O'Connor. Yes. Jacob R. Oliveira. Yes. Mark R. Pacheco. Yes. John C. Velas. Yes.
Ascertain the vote of several members and record them.
Collins.
Yes.
Yes. Brendan P. Crichton.
Yes.
Yes. Liz Miranda.
Yes.
Yes. Susan L. Moran.
Yes.
Yes.
So I go to here? Yeah. 39 members having voted in the affirmative, none in the negative. The bill is passed to be engrossed. The orders of the day have been completed. The senator from Arlington, Senator Friedman, offers an order which the clerk will read.
Order that when the Senate adjourns today, adjourn to meet again on Tuesday next at 11 o'clock a.m. The clerk be directed to dispense with the printing of a calendar.
Question comes on adoption of the order. Is there an objection? Clerk hears none. The order is adopted. Thank you. Oh. And who did this? Who was it? Okay. The senator from Hampshire, Franklin, and Comerford, and Worcester, Senator Comerford, moves that the Senate now adjourn. All those in favor say aye, opposed no. The ayes have it. And the Senate stands adjourned in memory of Mr. Joe Tringali to meet again on Tuesday next at 11 a.m. Thank you.